Hey, Russ here. Welcome back to my shop. I want to talk about faceplates. On Google Groups, I told you before that I belong to a group out there, Legacy Ornamental Mill. If you don't belong to that group in the Google Groups, you're missing out. A lot of legacy owners go to that group, and there's a lot of good material out there, and a lot of discussions go on constantly all the time. If you're not out there, you should be. If you're thinking about a legacy or try to understand how legacy really works, so you can see whether you really want one or not, you should be part of that group. Check it out. You'll see what I'm talking about. Anyway, I was on there the other day, and we got to talking about faceplates. The guy was talking about having a problem. Don't worry, Joe. I won't tell him your name. But I was talking about him having a problem. He said that he was trying to mount 5-inch square legs, pieces to make lathes. So they're real beefy farm table lathes or something. I don't know what they're for, but they're real big. And he said that he couldn't mount them in his chuck. Like mine, his chuck only goes up to about 3 inches. And so we talked about one of the ideas that came up from somebody was to use a faceplate. And he showed a picture of a metal faceplate that you can buy for like 20 bucks. And he said, okay, he says, that's a great idea. He says, but I'm going to have to buy 4 of them because I have 4 of them to make. And that got me to thinking that actually you don't need to buy any faceplates, quite honestly. I have the chuck, and apparently he does too, but you don't even need the chuck. If you look at your Legacy, on the end of it, on the headstock, it actually has a 1-inch TPI, 8 TPI thread on the outside of your shaft with the MT2 Morse taper on the inside. So just take this part out. You don't need this anymore. And what you do is you just mount this directly onto your headstock and screw it on. And that works great. But if you want to do something bigger than, well, fit in these jaws, let's say like a 4-inch square piece of wood instead of 3-inch, to mount something like that is pretty simple too. You just use a faceplate. But all you need is one, and you don't need to buy it. They're so simple to make. I just make them out of MDF, and I make them in 2 pieces. I make these up, and these are just 2.5 by 2.5 inch square. I tend to make them that size. And I've been doing this for a long time. I have on my regular lathe, if you look right there, I have a round disc with a sandpaper on it. It's 12 inches in diameter, and I mounted a table right on my lathe that I can take and have it to use that disc sander. And it works real well on my lathe. It makes it handy. Multitasking, you know me. I love to multitask. So not only do I use it as a lathe, but I use it as my disc sander. And it works real well. But the way I made that plate was the way I make all my plates. And that is that I have a chuck on there just like I do on my Legacy, just like this. And by making these 2.5 inches square, what you can do is, let me mount this here. Give me just a second. This is the same size as my headstock. So I take my jaw and I have it on my headstock, like so. And then I make up my piece like this, my block. They have to be square, it's very important, and I can drop it. If I open this up to the right amount, drop this in there, then when I lock it down, this centers it and locks this down exactly centered and square. If I'm bottoming out on my jaws, everything locks down square and you're good to go. So when you're making a faceplate, I do the same thing. I use the square and I drop it in. That holds it in place. I make sure that if I'm going to put screws in it, they go on the diagonal here. So that, because this is going to fit between my jaws, so these screws don't hit when you bottom out. They stay in between. So that way, this thing is always centered when I put it in, and then when I lock it down, it centers itself right up like it's supposed to. And so now this is good to use, and I have this surface here to make whatever I need to hold something. So faceplates like this are pretty handy. I can drill for 4 holes in it, just like the metal one, and do it that way. Or if I want, I can take like this one, and I have 4 cleats here. And I have this one specially made up, has a screw in the center, fits an 1.5 inch square piece of wood that I can put into there, lock it down, put it on my, and then I can take and put this on in my chuck with this on the back. This one is an old one. I use this one when they use the old method from Legacy. Unless you've owned a Legacy, you don't know what this is. But I don't even use this anymore, ever since I went to the plate, the jaws. So, and now I make a cleat on this so that I can put these pieces in and out, and I don't need to do anything else in order to change my pieces out. And I only use one faceplate to do all that. So I have the faceplate with the cleats all the way around with the screw. This sets in there, and everything is good to go. So even if you're doing something bigger, like a 5 inch, you can just adjust the size of your plate, and you can do the same thing and set it up so that you can do that, and you only use the one plate. If you only screw it down, you can take it back off and reuse the plate and just put holes in it wherever you need them as you make different jigs on your face plates. Now, the question in my mind came up after I got to talking about this with the group about using face plates as an alternative. It got me to thinking that they were saying that not everybody really has this. So if you need to use a faceplate, but you can't use your chuck the way I do here, you could use this on any size then. But what if you don't have the chuck at all? Well, all you have to do is that when you make these, if you want to, you can go out for less money than what that faceplate cost you, the first one. You can buy yourself a tap. And this is a 1 inch 8 TPI tap, same as the headstock. And all I do is I take small pieces of this MDF, 2.5 by 2.5, and this time I took and I put a crosshair on it to center, drilled it out of a 7/8 hole, which is what you need to use this tap. Using the drill press, I tapped this in there square so that that hole is perfectly square. Now I can take my faceplate, instead of using my chuck, I can take this and drop it directly onto my headstock, either on my lathe or on my Legacy, either one. And these faceplates then work on both of them without the need for this. And once I get it on there, if it's not square up, let's say your threads here are a little off when you tapped it, and that can happen, and so it wobbles slightly. When you put it on, true it up, this surface, and then you'll be fine. So you can true it up if you have to. If you built the thing right, you can use it either here or here. But if this is crooked and you have to square this up so that it fits when you put it in here, you can't use it here anymore. Just keep that in mind. This is not going to be able to be mounted either way. If you get this good and square, then when you do this method, it'll work either way. But not unless this is square. And if you're off square, when you put it on this way and you try it and it wobbles at all, don't worry about it. Just square it up, and then always use it only with the threaded part. Don't ever use this part again, and you'll be fine. It'll still be useful, because there's nothing wrong with putting your faceplates on this way instead of using the chuck. In some ways, I kind of like this way better. I think in the long run, this is going to work out better. So this works out real well for making your own faceplates. Simple, easy to do. I just use MDF. I use glue. And then I usually reinforce it with a couple of screws just to be safe. If you're going to true this plate up after you get this, take the screws out while you mill it up just to be safe. But I have these in there just to keep it from coming apart under stress on the mill. So will it come apart? I doubt it. But I do that just to be safe. I have these in here. It's up to you. So that's how that works. If you have any questions about this, leave them in the comments below. If you have to, there is one more thing I need to tell you though. I knew there was something else before I sign off. These threads, it's MDF. It really does the threads. If you look at them, they're very, very clean. They're not chipped out like they do with plywood or with regular wood. They don't chip and everything. They come out very clean. But you might say, well, that's MDF. How strong can that be? Well, you're probably right. But if you want to make those nice and strong, what I think would be a way to do it, I haven't tried it, but I know there's no doubt in my mind it would work. If you took polyurethane and mineral spirits, mix it 50-50. That way it will soak in easier. And then take a small brush and apply it to the threads themselves on this. Let it wait a half hour, because when it's 50-50 like that, it usually dries pretty fast. And I'd put about 3 coats on it so it all gets soaked in real good. Let it cure overnight so that it's good and cured then. And then take your tap and run it back through there and chase those threads to clean them up and blow it all out real good. Make sure everything's good and clean. Then come back and put a couple more coats of that 50-50 mixture on there. Let it dry for another 24 hours. Then chase the threads one last time. And now those threads should be pretty well plasticized by then. Nice and sturdy with that urethane encased on it. That should give you a much stronger thread theoretically. Is it worth the effort to go through that? I don't know. If I make these up, I usually try to make these up. I would probably make these up like 6 or 10 or 12 at a time and throw them in the drawer. So if I want to make a faceplate, I only have to grab some MDF and one of these to make my faceplate. The other thing I would do is that when you get these done, if you're going to coat them, do it now before you throw them in the drawer ready for use. And also, I would drill these 2 holes here. Whether you use them or not, drill them out. And then you also want to take those holes and taper them on both sides so that if you put the screw through there and you pull that in and you pull it tight, you want that to have that taper area so that if it does pull up on the other piece of MDF against this one, it isn't going to pull that away. So make sure you taper the holes on both sides of this little square piece when you drill these holes out so the screw will help. This thing will set flat even when you put a screw in there. And always pre-drill this piece before you put the screw into there. You're just foolish not to pre-drill MDF, period. So anyway, I think that's all the tips you need to be able to make these things. If you have any questions about making them, let me know. It is 3/4 inch thick MDF. I found that to be more than sturdy enough. If it's not, you can want to beef it up. You could probably add layers to it if you want to. But that's the whole thing in a nutshell. Pretty soon I'm going to show you what else you can do with this bolt, because I've been thinking about it. And I can actually take this chuck, if I take this bolt and mount it directly into a plate and making sure that it's exactly square and perpendicular once it's in place and held there, I can take this, mount it on my turntable. Now I can mount my chuck or a faceplate directly onto here and use it on my turntable, so I can put things on and off my turntable then, and they'll be centered up exactly every time once I set my plate up with this headstock size. Then I can either use this or use a faceplate to mount things on there. Also, I think this plate will work well on the drill press. Once you get centered, you can put things in and out, lock it down on the jaws to hold it, and you know you're going to be centered every time you put it back in there. So this will be really great for centering anything on your drill press and on your turntable when I get done. So stay tuned. You might want to subscribe, because you probably don't want to miss this idea when I get this done. Anyway, you can think about it. If you have any questions, let me know. Don't forget to like this video if you did. Most importantly, though, please come back again, because there's plenty more. We're nowhere near done yet. You have a terrific day. See ya.